Hi everyone! In this quick video I am going to briefly walk through using some of the second trace features in the calculator. Specifically, we're going to be looking at in the TI-84+CE how to use the second trace zeros, minimum, and maximum features. As you can see here on my screen, I've already got one equation or two equations plugged in, and we're just going to work with this top one, the absolute value function, first. So let's go to the graph and see what we've got. Notice because this is an absolute value function, we do have this nice V shape, and some of the defining characteristics that I often ask you to find are the intercepts, like these two x-intercepts, and also minimum and maximum points. So we're going to go through and we're going to find all three of these special points now using the calculator, because as you see when you look at this, these are not nice pretty integers. It looks like one of the x-intercepts is at -3 point, maybe a half, but we want to get better than that guess. We've got another one at 1.5 maybe, but let's get a little more accurate with that guess. All right, so if I would like to find this first x-intercept, this 0 that's on the left here, I'm going to go to second and then trace, and then I'm going to choose the second option here for zeros. Now when I do that, it's going to ask me a few questions that I need to answer. The first question it's going to ask is for the left bound. So what I need to do is I need to take this cursor and I need to move it over to the left side of the absolute value V so that the cursor is on the left-hand side of this x-intercept. So I'm going to use my cursor to slowly shift over to the left. And once it gets to the left of the V, or of the x-intercept on the V, I'm going to hit enter. And what you'll notice that this does is it puts this dotted line on the left-hand side of your x-intercept. If this left-handed bound is on the right-hand side of your x-intercept, you're going to get an error message. So be really sure that the x-intercept that you're trying to find, you put the left bound on the left side. The second question it asks is, what is the right bound? So I'm going to move the cursor back over to the right some until I get to the right side, the right-hand side of my x-intercept, and I'm going to hit enter again. This is going to put that bound, that line, on the right-hand side so you can see the thing that I'm trying to find, the x-intercept, it's in between these two dotted lines. So then for my third question, the guess, I'm going to move the cursor back over so it's approximately where the x-intercept is. And I'm going to hit enter one last time. And it tells me here that the 0, this x-intercept, is at x is equal to -3.5. So now we've just found this one, but this absolute value function has two. There's one over here as well. So now we're going to work through all of these steps again to find this other x-intercept. I'm going to go to second trace. I'm going to choose the second option for the zeros, and then it's going to ask me the same three questions. Now I need to move my left bound so that it's over closer to that x-intercept on the right-hand side. So I'm going to move it over quite a bit, so it's not close to that one that we just found, but it's closer to the x-intercept that I'm currently looking for. I'm going to hit enter. For the right bound, I'm going to move the cursor so that it's over here on the right-hand side of the x-intercept that I'm trying to find. And then after I hit enter, it's going to ask me to guess, so I'm going to move the cursor back down to where the x-intercept approximately is and hit enter one more time, and it's going to tell me that my 0, or my x-intercept, is at x is equal to 1.5. Now the other feature that I want to look at very briefly here is the second trace feature to find mins and maxes, because this absolute value function has a relative minimum or also an absolute minimum down here at the turning point of the graph. So let's go to second trace and let's choose option 3 for minimums so that we can practice finding those minimums. You're going to notice here that the questions are the same. It's going to ask me left bound, right bound, and guess. So I'm going to move my cursor back over to the left again because I again want my cursor to be on the left-hand side of the point that I'm trying to find, that relative minimum. So I've moved it over to the left. I'm going to hit enter. It asks me for the right bound, so I'm moving back over to the right now. Again, when you move the cursor in each respective direction, it should put lines so that the point that you're trying to find is in between the two lines. For my guess, I'm going to move a little back over towards my turning point and hit enter one more time, and then it's going to give me that value. Now this would round up here, so we've got a -1 and a -5 as my ordered pair there. All right, let's look at a second equation that has a little bit more going on. So I'm going to hide this absolute value function that we were just working with, and I'm going to show you this polynomial with the x to the 5th power. So let's look at the graph here, and then we'll see what we can find in terms of special points. All right, so I see a couple of things when I look at this graph. In terms of x-intercepts, I see 1, 2, 3 of them. So I'm going to use second trace and then the zeros option 3 times to find all of those roots. I also see a relative maximum and a relative minimum, so I'm going to do those as well for you. So let's go to second trace. I'm going to do the zeros first, so I'm going to choose the second option. The calculator is asking me for the left bound, so I'm going to start on this one over here on the left. So I'm going to move the cursor so that it is on the left-hand side of that. When it draws the line, it's on the left-hand side of that x-intercept I'm trying to find. When I move the cursor to the right to do the right bound, I don't want to get too far over near this other x-intercept. So I'm going to stop right up there where it looks like the maximum might be pretty close to, and then I'm going to go back for my guess to that x-intercept and hit enter one more time. This gives it a nice small area, and I can see where my x-intercept is down here. It says x is equal to approximately -1.5. All right, let's do that again to find this middle x-intercept. I'm going to second trace, and then I'm choosing the second option for zeros. For my left bound, I want to get it away from this x-intercept that I just found and over closer to the one that I'm currently looking for. So I'm going to move him over a little bit so he's closer. There's my left-hand side. It asks me for my right bound, so I'm going to go over to the right-hand side of the x-intercept that I'm looking for. And then for the guess, I'm going to put the cursor back in the middle, pretty close to being right on top of that x-intercept that I'm trying to find, and hit enter one more time. And that tells me that my x-intercept is at approximately -0.6. I'm rounding to tenths places. Now I do need to do this one more time to find this third zero that's on the far right side. So I'm going to go to second trace. I'm going to choose 0 one more time. And then I'm going to move my cursor over so that it is on the left side of that x-intercept, but a little closer to it rather than being close to that one that I just found. So I'm going to hit enter. It put the dotted line on the left-hand side of my intercept. I'm going to move over to the right and hit enter. Now I have my x-intercept in between those two lines, so when I make my guess and hit enter one more time, it's then going to guess that it's at approximately a half. So I have found all 3 of those x-intercepts. There were still 2 more special points that I want to do a quick review of how to find this maximum and then also this minimum. So let's go back to second trace, and this time let's find the maximum. So we're going to choose option number 4 this time. Now notice here I'm finding the maximum. It tells me that up at the top of my calculator. Be sure that you're putting the left and right bounds for this maximum. Don't get mixed up and do that minimum. So I'm going to move the cursor over to the left because it's again asking me the same 3 questions. Put the cursor on the left side, the right side, and then guess. So I'm trying to find this maximum up here. I put my cursor on the left-hand side and hit enter. So it's to the left of that max. I'm going to move the cursor over to the right-hand side of that maximum and hit enter. So it puts that bar on the right-hand side. And then for my guess, the third piece, I'm going to move close to that maximum and hit enter one last time. When I do that, it gives me that my maximum's ordered pair is at approximately -1.5, 2.1. All right, let's do one more of these. Let's do this minimum down here. If I go to second trace, and this time I choose minimum, option number 3, then I can find my minimum. So I'm going to do my left bound on the left-hand side of the minimum. It asks for my right bound, so I'm going to move the cursor over so that it's on the right-hand side of that turning point. I'm going to hit enter, And then the third question, the guess, I'm going to move it back down to where that minimum is and hit enter one more time. And that is going to give me my minimum's exact ordered pair. So with this one, we are looking at a number that is very, very small here, and we'll talk about what that scientific notation means a little later if you haven't already talked about it in your science classes. But essentially we're looking at 0, negative 1.2 for that ordered pair. And if you are not sure about how to read that, please either come see me before or after class or ask during class and we'll talk about it. Or you may be doing that in your chemistry class really soon as well. So we'll talk about that when it becomes relevant for us. For our purposes right now, that rounds to 0. Okay, so in this video, we looked at the second trace feature, and we reviewed how to find zeros, minimums, and maximums using that second trace where you do have to do the left and right bounds and then make your guess. Those will give you exact values for those ordered pairs that you can round to whatever decimal is necessary rather than just kind of eyeballing it and guessing.